From the first convoy alarms of 1939 to the final surrender signals of 1945, Britain fought a naval war that was less about single duels and more about endurance. The Royal Navy's victory wasn't built by one supership. It was built by a repeatable inventory of warships, carriers that projected air power, battleships that anchored fleets, cruisers that controlled routes, destroyers that screened everything. We'll start with the flat tops, move through the heavy hitters, and end where the war was decided most often: escorts and submarines. Before we continue, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe. Trust me, you're going to love this series. Illustrious-class aircraft carrier, the armored deck brawler. You can spot it in the thick, boxy hangar and the emphasis on protection over elegance. It existed to keep flying after taking hits, because the Mediterranean punished carriers with bombs and short reaction times. Its proof moment is Taranto and the Malta convoy fight, when carrier aircraft and deck resilience mattered under pressure. The hard line, a carrier that could absorb damage others couldn't. The verdict, brutally survivable, but smaller air groups and slower generation rates than later designs. For Britain, that armor lesson immediately raised a new problem: how to get more flight decks faster. Colossus-class light fleet carrier, the emergency mass production deck. Visually, it's a simpler, straighter carrier, built to be produced in numbers rather than perfection. The doctrine was speed of construction: put acceptable carriers into service and grow naval air power without waiting for elite yard capacity. The proof moment is late war commissioning and the post-war impact. Several entered service before the end, ready for the next phase of operations. The hard line, ordered in a big wartime batch designed to scale. Verdict, not a frontline World War II superstar, but a strategic answer to the carrier shortage. Once light fleets existed, the convoy war demanded something even more repeatable than a fleet carrier. Attacker-class escort carrier, the Convoy air umbrella. Converted from American merchant hulls, the Silhouette is a compact flight deck with a workmanlike island, made for function, not prestige. Its role was to put fighters and anti-sub aircraft over convoys where land-based air couldn't reach. It proved itself covering amphibious landings and providing convoy protection in the Atlantic, then adapting as the war shifted. The hard line, Lend-Lease carriers that multiplied British coverage quickly. Verdict, limited speed and air group size, but absolutely decisive in closing the air gap. As escort carriers multiplied, the Royal Navy leaned into the idea that quantity, not glamour, could win weeks of convoy survival. Ruler-class escort carrier, the most numerous British carrier class of the war. You recognize the concept. Standardized escort carrier form, built in American yards and transferred under Lend-Lease, designed to be fielded in bulk. The job was steady, unromantic control, cap for convoys, aircraft ferry work, and support for amphibious operations. The proof is the sheer scale of the type in British service and its constant presence in the Atlantic system. The hard line, the single most numerous carrier class under the White Ensign in World War II. Verdict, not built for fleet slugfests, but perfect for the war Britain actually had to fight. Air power afloat changed the chessboard, but heavy ships still decided where fleets could safely operate. King George V, class battleship, the treaty-built heavyweight. The look is modern battleship geometry, balanced armor, strong silhouette, and a main battery designed under treaty constraints. It existed to face peer capital ships and to anchor the home fleet in a world where a breakout raider could force strategic panic. The proof moment is the Bismarck chase, where Royal Navy battleships helped run down and finish Germany's flagship threat. The hard line, every ship of the class saw combat in World War II. Verdict, a capable modern capital ship, though its main armament compromises reflected treaty-era limits. Yet Britain could not wait for modern hulls alone. Older battleships carried the load early and often. Queen Elizabeth-class battleship, the modernized veteran. Long hull, classic lines, and repeated refits. These ships evolved from First World War giants into World War II workhorses. Their role became fleet presence, bombardment, and Mediterranean muscle when carriers were scarce and bases were contested. They proved their value in major fleet actions and sustained operations, bringing big gun credibility to contested seas. The hardline, modernized repeatedly to stay relevant across decades. Verdict, powerful and dependable, but modernization had ceilings. Speed, machinery age, and vulnerability to air attack were constant realities. That same reality forced an even blunter question. Could slower, older hulls still matter in a fast, air-led war? Revenge-class battleship, the steady but limited deterrent. They're recognizable as older battleships, conservative lines, sturdy construction, and less speed than newer units. Their doctrine was not glamorous fleet sprinting. It was strategic coverage, convoy protection in high-threat periods, and freeing newer ships for sharper missions. Their proof moment is simply endurance. They served where presence mattered and risk was managed. The hard line, slower battleships used intelligently to stretch an overstretched fleet. Verdict, valuable as insurance, but not the tool for carrier-era pursuit and rapid reaction. When battleships set the outer boundary, cruisers controlled the daily geometry of routes, convoys, and choke points. Town-class cruiser, 1936, the big gun light cruiser statement. The visual cues are a long, purposeful hull and heavy. Turret layout for a light cruiser, designed to fight for sea control and protect trade routes. Its role was fleet screening, independent patrol, and convoy escort at a level destroyers couldn't sustain. Proof comes in harsh northern waters and contested theaters where cruisers had to do everything: fight, escort, and survive. The hard line, a class that stayed relevant through refits and radar upgrades. Verdict, strong all-rounders, but expensive and always in demand. As the war matured, Britain needed cruisers that were still capable, just more efficiently packaged for wartime reality. Crown Colony-class cruiser, Fiji/Ceylon. The compact cruiser compromise. Recognizable as smaller, more constrained cruisers built to get numbers without losing capability. Their doctrine was enough cruiser for global work, escorting, raiding defense, and fleet support across multiple oceans. They proved their worth through extensive service across the war, doing the constant patrol and escort grind that never made headlines. The hard line, widely used, heavily tasked, and repeatedly upgraded with wartime sensors. Verdict, extremely useful, though compromises showed in crowding and limitations once anti-air demands exploded. But Britain also entered the war with a cruiser type designed for empire policing, then hardened it for total war. County-class cruiser, the treaty-heavy cruiser workhorse. Long-range, classic heavy cruiser proportions and the mission profile of global deployment. The County's job was to hunt raiders, protect trade routes, and provide fleet support far from home. Exactly what an Empire Navy needed. In World War II, that became Atlantic Patrol, convoy support, and presence in distant theaters. The hard line, designed for endurance and reach, not just fleet battles. Verdict, strategically priceless for coverage, though armor limits and air threat demanded careful handling. Air power kept tightening the noose, and that pushed cruisers toward a different identity, fighting aircraft as much as ships. Dido-class cruiser, the anti-air guardian. The signature is the dual-purpose gun layout and the intent, a cruiser built to sit with carriers and convoys and SWAT aircraft while still being a surface combatant. Doctrine-wise, it was the missing link between destroyer AA and heavy cruiser presence. Its proof moment is Mediterranean convoy defense, especially the Malta runs, where protecting the convoy was the battle. The hard line, designed as a dedicated AA cruiser concept, heavily worked and repeatedly refitted. Verdict, a strong escort leader, though early turret and system complexities caused real headaches. When cruisers set the perimeter, destroyers lived on the edge, fast, expendable, and always the first to meet the threat. Tribal-class destroyer, the gunfighter destroyer. You can see the emphasis immediately. A destroyer that looks built to throw weight with its guns, reflecting a doctrine of aggressive surface, action and flotilla leadership. Tribals proved themselves in hard early war fighting. Norway, the Channel, and the Mediterranean, where destroyers weren't just screens. They were frontline combatants. The hard line, a destroyer type built around firepower and presence. Verdict, lethal in a fight, but in the convoy grind, gun-heavy destroyers still needed the sensors, endurance, and ASW kit to survive. That lesson steered design toward a more balanced destroyer, still dangerous, but built for the full spectrum. JK and N-class destroyer, the torpedo and escort hybrid. A cleaner, more standardized destroyer silhouette with a doctrine shift. Regained torpedo punch while staying practical for fleet and escort work. They were used everywhere. Fleet actions, convoy escort, and the endless rotations that defined British destroyer service. Their proof is simply ubiquity. They were present in the places that mattered because the Navy could field them in numbers. The hard line, 24, built as 3 flotillas, a real wartime backbone. Verdict, versatile and effective, though wartime losses showed how punishing destroyer duty was. As threats multiplied, the destroyer had to become an anti-air and anti-sub platform, not just a fast attacker. L and M-class destroyer, the wartime adaptation destroyer. Visually think incremental evolution, improved AA emphasis, modernized layouts, and constant wartime fitting changes. The role was fleet screen, convoy escort, and rapid response, often in the same deployment. Proof comes in the Mediterranean and Atlantic cycle, where destroyers were the ships that were always on scene first. The hard line, repeatedly updated to match a threat environment that changed faster than shipyards could build. Verdict, capable and flexible, though every added weapon and radar set fought for weight, stability, and maintenance time. The next step was less about glamour and more about generating hulls that could be produced and replaced under pressure. O and P-class destroyer, the emergency flotilla. Their identity is wartime standardization, built quickly to fill the destroyer gap with reliable layouts and practical combat power. Doctrine, keep the destroyer screen thick because screens are what keep capital ships alive. Proof is their steady service in escort and fleet duties, doing the hard miles that never became legend. The hard line, built to meet wartime demand rather than pre-war ideal. Verdict, not revolutionary, but exactly the kind of ship a nation at war needed. Good enough, available, and fielded in numbers. By mid-war, good enough became a doctrine of its own, and destroyers began to look like a continuous production line. U and V-class destroyer, the late-war fleet workhorse. They're recognizable as streamlined wartime destroyers designed for large-scale output and constant upgrade. The role was everything: screening carriers, escorting convoys, supporting amphibious landings, and hunting. Submarines with improved sensors. Proof is how naturally they fit into late-war operations, built to work with radar, air cover, and coordinated task groups. The hard line, part of the late-war destroyer wave that kept the Royal Navy operationally thick. Verdict, highly useful, though still constrained by the brutal reality that destroyers were always in harm's way. Late war also demanded destroyers that could keep pace with rapidly changing tactics, especially around coastal threats and fast attacks. W and Z-class destroyer, the incremental improvement fighters. Their identity is evolution under fire. Refine what works, fix what breaks, and keep the fleet supplied with modern destroyers as losses and commitments mount. Their role spanned escort, fleet actions, and support of amphibious operations where speed and responsiveness mattered. Proof came in the constant retasking. 1 week screening, the next chasing submarines, the next supporting a landing. The hard line, built into a wartime system that valued repeatability. Verdict, effective and adaptable. Though crew fatigue and mechanical wear were relentless. All of that still left one uncomfortable truth. Traditional fleet destroyers weren't always ideal for slow convoy speeds and long escort legs. Hunt-class escort destroyer, the purpose-built convoy screen. Shorter, compact, and designed for mass production, the Hunts were built for trade protection. Well-armed, economical compared to fleet destroyers, and suited to escort work. Doctrine: accept a bit less speed and torpedo glamour in exchange for hulls that could be built, deployed, and rotated through escort theaters. Their proof is the escort war itself. Hunts were constantly present in the Channel, North Sea, and Mediterranean escort roles. The hard line? 80-plus built, a true wartime standard. Verdict: excellent escorts, though range and seakeeping limitations shaped where they were best used. Even with escorts, the Atlantic War exposed a brutal shortage. The Allies needed small ships that could be built everywhere, quickly. Flower-class corvette, the convoy savior. You can spot a flower by its merchant-like roots and blunt practicality. Small, tough, and designed around simple construction. Its job was anti-sub escort, holding the line through bad weather, limited speed, and constant contact reports. Proof is the Battle of the Atlantic, where flowers formed the bulk of early escort strength and kept convoys alive when there were not enough destroyers. The hard line, produced in huge numbers across Allied yards, becoming synonymous with convoy escort. Verdict: indispensable, though slow, cramped, and hard on crews in heavy seas. As the war progressed, the Royal Navy demanded an escort that could do the same job with more endurance, better handling, and better systems growth. River-class frigate, the long-legged submarine hunter. The design cues are a larger escort hull and a layout built for sensors and sea time, made to stay with convoys and work in the North Atlantic properly. Doctrine: improve ASW performance, extend range, and give escorts the stability to fight in weather, not just survive it. Rivers proved themselves as late-war convoy escorts, increasingly capable as radar, ASTIC, and tactical coordination improved. The hardline, built in very large numbers, a centerpiece of Allied escort production. Verdict: a major upgrade over earlier escorts, though still part of a team system, not a lone hunter. Yet escorts also needed a ship that could defend convoys from air attack while still being a serious anti-sub platform. Black Swan-class sloop, the convoy shield. Sloops like the Black Swans look purposeful, balanced hulls with strong anti-air emphasis and the seakeeping to stay on station. Their role was convoy escort with credible AA and ASW capability, making them prized assets in threatened waters. Proof is their reputation as among the best escort vessels at the start of the war, repeatedly tasked where protection quality mattered most. The hard line, built in multiple wartime batches with improved variants as the threat evolved. Verdict: highly effective escorts, though never as mass-produced as the simplest corvettes. On the other side of the same convoy fight, Britain also waged an offensive submarine war, quiet, risky, and strategically sharp. T-class submarine, the big patrol striker. The T-class identity is reach and punch, larger diesel-electric boats designed for offensive patrols and multiple torpedo attacks. The doctrine was hunting warships and cutting supply in contested seas, especially where surface forces were stretched. They proved themselves across the Mediterranean and beyond, becoming a major part of Royal Navy submarine operations. The hardline, built in large numbers, used aggressively, and central to Britain's undersea effort. Verdict: potent and flexible. Though every patrol was a high-stakes gamble against ASW defenses and accidents. Where the T-class carried reach, Britain also needed smaller boats that could fight close to enemy shores and in constrained waters. U-class submarine, the small ambush specialist. Compact hull, quick handling, and a profile suited for narrow seas, these submarines were built in significant numbers and used heavily, particularly in the Mediterranean. Their role was opportunistic attack, slip into hostile lanes, strike quickly, and disappear before escorts could converge. Their proof is the sheer volume of patrol work and combat reputation earned in confined, high-traffic theaters. The hardline, dozens built in wartime programs, forming a true mass of small submarines. Verdict: deadly in the right environment, though limited endurance and size made some oceans and missions impractical. Taken together, this most used inventory shows what Britain's naval war really was. A system built around coverage, rotation, and layered defense. Carriers extended vision and reach. Battleships anchored deterrence and forced enemy choices. Cruisers managed routes and protected task groups. Destroyers and escorts fought the daily, grinding war, screening fleets, guarding convoys, and hunting submarines in weather that killed as surely as weapons. And beneath it all, British submarines hunted in silence, turning pressure into attrition. The legacy is simple. Modern navies still copy this logic: air power, screens, escorts, sensors, and endurance, because World War II proved that the sea is won by fleets that can stay in the fight.